За мен е удоволствие да дам думата на един добър приятел на Балканите, човек, който познава последните 15 години на нашия регион интимно. Това е Kreig Kenedi, президент на германския фонд Маршал, който е наш съорганизатор днес. Благодаря.
First, I want to thank the Prime Minister for those really excellent opening remarks. I want to thank Foreign Minister Mladinov and his team for inviting us to be part of this meeting, and thank to all of you who have worked to make this meeting a success, including the many speakers and participants from the region and beyond. For GMF, this is an especially important occasion. We've been working in this region now for 15 years. Our Balkan Trust for Democracy has been a supporter of many efforts focused on supporting national and local efforts to integrate the region and the countries of this region into Europe and the transatlantic community. Many of the people in this room, including most of the participants in the first panel, are long-term friends of GMF and the Balkan Trust and have helped us immeasurably in our work in the Balkans and in Bulgaria. My first visit to Sofia was 15 years ago. Bulgaria and the Balkans were not happy places, as the Prime Minister pointed out. There was a banking and economic crisis here. There were conflicts just ended, some just started elsewhere in the Balkans, tensions in many of the key spots of this region, and multiple other problems were present, but overshadowed by real violence and real wars. But all of these problems had one positive side effect. Many of the brightest minds in Europe and the US were focused on this region. The European Union and the United States government were deeply engaged in supporting civil society and other important ventures here. American and European foundations were deeply involved in the region and were busy supporting many of the best young thinkers at the time who have now emerged as important political and intellectual leaders. It was the worst of times, but also the best of times in that the problems were big and the financial and political and intellectual resources were marshaled to address them. The world is very different now. There are still problems, but the challenges of this region do not grab headlines like the Middle East, North Africa, Afghanistan, or China. The problems are more complicated and more subtle than in the past and require a different approach to addressing them. Sometimes they're so complicated and so difficult that politicians and intellectuals alike are tempted to ignore them and focus on those challenges elsewhere that are more on the headlines and maybe offer easier solutions. The private and public money that supported think tanks, young activists, and rising intellectuals 15 years ago has not disappeared, but it is much smaller than it used to be. The Bosch Foundation, GMF, Open Society, Mott, and a few others are still here, but many others have shrunk their commitments or disappeared altogether. And in Sofia and elsewhere, there are still vibrant think tanks, but not as many as there were just a few years ago. When we created the Balkan Trust for Democracy, we really had three goals. One is to help this region integrate itself into the major Euro-Atlantic structure, NATO. Second, to help these countries follow a path into the European Union. And finally, to create a more integrated region where you could capture some of the economic and other benefits of shared trade and economic growth. The key challenge today is how to address that unfinished agenda. Yes, some of the countries have entered NATO and others are on the way. Some have entered the European Union and others on the way, and there has been some progress on integration in this region. But there's still much left to be done. So how do we keep the Balkans on the map and on the political agenda when so many other issues are fighting for the attention of leaders in Europe and the United States? a Euro crisis that grabs the headlines every day and makes it very easy to forget maybe the more mundane but difficult challenges that are faced here. The American shift towards Asia, which maybe isn't as big a pivot as many think, but still makes people here wonder if the United States still cares about the Balkans. GMF and the Balkan Trust are here to support you. Our support is modest, but we hope that we can be useful. Let me just add a final note. We are also very pleased that Bulgaria and others in this region are sharing their experience and knowledge to activists, think tanks, and political leaders in the Middle East and North Africa. The Sofia platform in December was a very important event and sent a vital message to civil society activists in those countries where democracy and a liberal order are still aspirations. We are very committed to continuing our modest support of this region as it addresses its unfinished challenges. And we are also very willing to work with the foreign minister and others on helping the MENA region capture the best thinking and experience that the Balkans have to offer. I hope we have a very good 2 days, and again, thank you all for being here.